everyone. It is September 5th, 2023 at 6:38 p.m. This is the Select Board meeting. I call this meeting to order, and if you could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone? Public speak. Any individual may raise an issue not included on the agenda, and it will be taken under advisement by the board. There will be no opportunity for debate during this portion of the meeting. The section of the agenda is limited to 15 minutes, and any one individual addressing the board during this section shall be limited to 5 minutes. Seeing no one, let us move now to discussion and decision. Deliberation of a select board position on the establishment of a charter commission. Let me just preface this. We started this discussion at the end of the last meeting, and there were some issues that were raised and concerns, and we didn't want to take a vote at that meeting, so that is why we're back on the agenda. Okay, Mr. Sidney, you gotta...
So I've had a bunch of time to consider, and I was wrong. And
could you elaborate?
well, I was about to.
Okay.
It wasn't a blanket admission.
I'm starting with the mea culpa. I actually went out and I talked to some people I trust to get their opinions. And I'm going to start by saying I think this is a really fine line, but I've come to realize that it really is in our area to support this. It really is a good, and I've said all along, I think it's a good idea. It was really my concern about, the public view of what the board is doing and whether it was something we should be doing. And what I've come to realize is that while I just came down too hard on the other side of the line. And so I'm absolutely willing to support this at this point. I apologize to the board for my vehemence. I will also say that I think that, I've got so much experience in different parts of town government that I really try to hold a bright line on lanes because I've been in so many of them and still am. And it's hard. And, so I had some kind of I also will say I had some kind of an internal reaction that set me on that path. And when I realized it was a personal reaction and not a policy reaction, I had to come around. So that's where I'm at.
Let me just make a comment on that. We have 5 people who have passionate opinions, and that's a very healthy thing. So you never have to apologize. We may not agree, but passion is good. It also helps us question assumptions that we might have that might be incorrect. So keep it flowing. Don't worry about it. Does anybody else have any comments?
I just want to comment about passion. We should never in this board apologize for passion on any subject.
Exactly.
Unless it's ad hominem attacks against a fellow officer, a fellow board member.
Thank you. Sorry, yeah, we're in public session, it's okay.
I appreciate your remarks, Rich. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, that's what I ditto. Thank you, Bruce, for never apologize. I think you didn't do anything that was out of line at all. I agree. I think we all have our opinions. I think it's important. Again, I think we did a good job, and we have done a good job in this board since I've been serving the last few years of modeling disagreement Frankly, we took time, right? I'm the one that usually lights the fire. I feel like I need it done yesterday, and I know sometimes my urgency gets ahead of explaining why and justifying things. So the fact that we as multiple members of this body felt uncomfortable making a decision and chose to do it later, that's great. That's good for the public. Great that we had time. I also do appreciate that we're deliberating on it, because I do think the importance of this support, if presuming support, or a position, especially given the conversations going forward. We're in a very difficult and challenging couple of months here heading into town meeting. Obviously, governance is a big part of adding complexity to that. So I think the more clarity we can offer the community on our positions on things does help that discussion as a community. But I appreciate your comments, Rich. And again, there was nothing to apologize for. I think it was just, your opinion. And I'm, sounds like you're changing your opinion, which supports where I was at. So I'm happy about that. But you don't have to. Like I've also never felt the need to have a 5-0 vote on this board ever. I think the community is very well served by some 3-2s with a spirited debate. And frankly, they probably want to see that more often, because it shows that we actually are individuals thinking on their behalves.
Yeah, and I, like I've said all along, I do support the Charter Commission. I was really concerned about whether this board should be taking a position and what the public perception would be of that. And when I realized that some of my stance was a personal reaction, that's when I realized I was wrong.
If I may, Mr. Chair, one thing, I don't know that we got into the details because it was more of a just discussion. We didn't get into the depth of the history here, but it is important for the public to remember that we did, as a select board, appoint a body that studied this, the Town Governance Study Committee. They spent 15 months and however many meetings it was to come to a conclusion, working with a consultant as well. And their conclusion, even with all of that time and all of those people steeped in town experience, they recognized the need to have a focused body like a Charter Commission consider this. So I think, from the standpoint of a policy-making board, in some ways I'll call it stance, to use your word, the position we had in having a study committee looking at it was, we were being served much like we were with the dam committee and with 5 Auburn RFP. We had outside eyes and ears on it, hopefully bringing back feedback from the community. So I felt very comfortable advocating for it as a body position. And we did talk to town council. I do think it's important also to acknowledge that there are other initiatives with the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee that are underway for fall town meeting articles. I know we're going to be discussing articles in the next agenda item, but to the point about having respective lanes of a legislature and an executive branch, I personally am of the mind that we need to sort of establish our positions as a body. We as individuals, part of the challenge we have in town governance is that people do occupy multiple lanes, and to me there's nothing more amplifying of a need to look at the whole system if we need that to occur. And the sad truth is we do, because of the lack of engagement. We do have a lot of people that do multiple things because the volunteer supply is shrinking. That's part of it. So it's an important point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion or comments? So I think that we are given that, and thank you, Mr. Joseph, for talking about the Town Governance Study Committee and their recommendation. So I will take a motion to support, I guess it's to support the creation of the Charter Commission.
Mr. Chair, I move to support the efforts of a Charter Commission to examine the town governance structure.
Over a second.
Is that to support, I guess, endorse the placement of it on the ballot? Or when you say, we're supporting the initiative to place it on the ballot, I think, as opposed to...
So I move to endorse placing the initiative on the ballot, that the select board endorse placing the initiative on the ballot. Is that what we're looking for?
I think so.
That's my motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Kristen. All in favor, say aye.
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 None opposed. We're 5-0-0. Now we're on to the...
Before we move on, Mr. Chairman, I just received a text. And let me just pick the gut of it. If a majority of select board goes on record now for a charter commission, then they are in conflict with the CBRC and likely will have a 268A problem commenting on CBRC motions.
Could you read the entire text message, since you're being texted as a member of the select board during a
public
select board
session?
meeting in public session?
Please read the entirety. Who's it from? What is it pertaining to? This is
Okay.
public comment on our vote.
Yeah, so it's from Mr. Griesmer. Select Board should not take up the matter of endorsing a charter commission until at least after the CBRC reports on charter and also the omissions in the study commission report. If a majority of SB goes on record now for a charter commission, then they are in conflict with the CBRC and likely will have a 268A problem, which I don't even know what that is, commenting on CBRC motions. Further, the topic of SESB endorsing a political action committee getting signatures should first be vetted through state ethics office. And I do understand that we did vet it with town council. So, does anybody know what a 268A?
I'm looking that up now. I'm just kind of confused why that comment came through you, Mr. Sidney, and not through the chair, and why that person did not
Speak during
appear
public.
via Zoom or on camera or identify himself. And I do appreciate the word "should." I understand that to be an opinion.
Duly noted. It's in the record. It doesn't matter. We just took a vote. I have no problems with the perception of one individual's opinion on something. And I urge the chair to move on to our next agenda
Well,
item. Frankly.
I just want to comment on that, because we have said all along that we view these processes as independent tracks. By us saying, advocating, putting it on the ballot as an initiative, we are not saying, yes, necessarily, yes, we support this. We're not saying that. What we're saying is it deserves to be put on the ballot. That's it. End of story. End of discussion. The Charter and Bylaw Review Committee, we are working with them to craft the two motions that are going to be heard at fall town meeting. Those are independent tracks. I don't see the convergence of them, and I don't think it's inappropriate for us to weigh in on it, the Charter Commission. So now I believe it's the end of discussion. Okay, so let's move on to fall annual town meeting.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Have we set up a joint select board CRBC?
We have not.
So it's entirely possible that the CRBC will not want to work with us on crafting those motions.
That's a possibility, but
I just wanted to state that.
my understanding is they wanted to create a working group, and they're working with their lawyers to craft the motions. So I will be getting back to Mr. Griesmer and trying to set that working group up. But I have no other knowledge at this point. Sure. Okay, so we have on the agenda the fall town meeting warrant. And just for board members' information, we have this on both tonight's agenda as well as tomorrow night's agenda. So I guess that we have the leeway to talk about it tonight or not talk about it tonight. So I welcome inputs tonight. And perhaps we can maybe talk about some of them tonight and maybe vote on them tomorrow night. But I welcome your inputs.
Can I provide a brief update if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair?
Sure, please.
I want to give the flexibility. That's why I asked Joan to put it on both nights. That's strictly a reason. If you choose not to talk about it either night, that's fine. But just for an update for consideration, tonight, actually, I'm going to be heading out of here in about 5 minutes to go upstairs to the Finance Committee meeting because they are going to be reviewing the MWRA article, which is technically a select board sponsored article. But you reviewed all of those materials. Same materials are being presented tonight. You reviewed them back in, I think, June or July. July, actually, I think it was. So we took...
And approved them.
And approved them, yep. And advanced them. So that's why you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to do anything with those, although it would be great for you just to continue to support that. Of the remaining articles that are select board, The other two primary ones actually do relate to charter and bylaw adjustments. I had, actually, sorry, I'll go back. Article 12, rescind Article 35 of the 2001 Spring Annual Town Meeting. That's related to the chiefs. That's also tonight upstairs. That will be reviewed by the Finance Committee. Again, I provided a motion language to you initially in draft form, and you reviewed that, and we just wanted to move that forward through the Finance Committee process.
Okay. Did we,
Any
I
questions
thought we
on those two?
approved that.
You did, yes.
Yeah.
That's why you're sponsoring it. I'm going through the select board sponsored
I just
articles
want to
right
make
now.
sure we've dotted i's, crossed
Yep.
t's. Okay.
Yep, you did, yes. I just want to make sure that you, as you talk about the consideration tonight and tomorrow night, you just realize where those updates are. Regarding some of the other two select board sponsored articles, they're related really to the charter and bylaw work. You did sponsor, for example, the two articles, one related to the personnel board work, and one related to, or the roles and responsibilities of the personnel board, and one related to the appointment authority for the comptroller, police chief, and fire chief. I have already started discussions with council about how best to craft motions under those articles. Obviously, somewhat depends on, at least pending the dialogue with the CBRC, and what those motions look like will help inform if and what the motions for those articles can look like. But my intent is in the coming week to 2 weeks to work with council to at least draft supplementary or side motions for this board to just review, and or provide to the CBRC for some guidance or thoughts.
Okay.
So just wanted to have an update on that as well.
That's great.
Jamie goes.
Go ahead, Mr. Sid.
The personnel board one,
Yes.
the CVRC doesn't have anything in either of their warrant articles to do any of the bylaw changes in there. So
Correct.
I think that's going to, be whatever it is. Whether they're, their charter change, I would imagine, our charter change, any charter change we propose and that they propose should probably be synced up so we don't end up with two
100%.
different versions.
Yep. That's why I was talking to legal counsel about that. And depending on legal interpretation of the current language of the charter, will determine what, if anything, even needs to change in the charter, or if it's all bylaw changes. So, I'm happy to, before heading out, answer any questions on some of the other articles, town administrator sponsor articles. One note is there are a couple articles regarding that are atypical, non-typical articles that were sponsored by town administrator me. One is regarding zoning in the highway mixed use zoning district. This is specific to the area by the Exponent property.
Okay.
Exponent, if you recall, a handful of years ago, we actually held a special town meeting to rezone a parcel for them that used to be the Johnson Paints, or the, it used to be a paint factory back in the 50s and 60s. They've since built their building, brand new building right along Route 9 across the street from our water treatment plant. They then have since purchased the Web Reply building, which is right next door, and they want the ability to potentially build a new building or expand their existing building. This zoning change will let them have that flexibility. It's also consistent with what MathWorks just recently also adopted. So we just need to go through the public hearing process with the planning board on that article.
Okay, and that's scheduled?
Soon to be scheduled. I think it's for a week and a half from now, if not 2 weeks from now. I have to confirm that with Amanda. The other one that is atypical, and actually there's a couple that are atypical. One is the opioid settlement monies. That's also being discussed tonight at FinCom. A couple notes on that. The town has already been receiving opioid settlement funds. We are anticipating the state legislature to pass special legislation that will allow towns just to put those in a special account. That's why we haven't seen this article before. That has not happened yet, so we're seeking to appropriate free cash because it, based on current DLS guidance, it falls to free cash, the monies that come in. At the same time, we're obligated by the state and by the settlements to report on exactly how we spent those funds. So it's very interesting that we are required to do certain reporting, but we don't have the tools to actually separate those funds from our free cash numbers. So this is an interim step to allow us to take what we know has come in to put into an account that we can then report on.
Do we create a stabilization fund for it?
The state is going to pass special legislation to allow us to have special accounts set up, so we don't even have to go to town meeting to appropriate the funds. It'll be received as like a grant. It automatically goes into those accounts and we'll be required to reuse them. That way we don't even need to, because it's not as if it's the use of the funds and the required reporting aren't even subject to town meeting. So
that's advised.
revolving funds have town meeting authorization. Right. We don't even have that sort of flexibility. We're obligated to spend monies a certain way. The other one is just the revolving funds. There are 2 revolving accounts that we're seeking to establish. One is related to energy efficiency, sort of with Jillian's work and what we've been doing with, what we will be doing anyway with the library. Well, we're already doing the library project, but also the Benham project that we got grant funding for. We'll start receiving some rebate funding from energy providers, and we just want an opportunity to capture those funds to put towards more projects in the future. And then the Recreation and Parks programs is actually a shift from one type of account to another type of account. If you have more questions, John can talk your ear off on these accounts, but basically this gives us more flexibility to utilize those program funds for supporting the programs.
Right.
And then those are most of the atypical ones.
Okay. Mr. Joseph.
If I may. I guess just for clarification from the town administrator's perspective through you, Mr. Chair. So we've got, I guess one of the concerns I have, given the perceived to be desired, negotiated, and collaborated bylaw changes or charter changes between the CBRC and what we've put on the warrant. The outstanding question I have, and maybe you can clarify it for me in simple language, or maybe it needs council's feedback before we know, based on looking at how the motion would read. Right now, Article 25 basically talks about filing a home rule petition for special act legislation, whereas the 2 that are on the warrant from the select board are to amend the Natick Home Rule Charter and/or bylaws as appropriate, without that language of special act legislation. Can you articulate, is there a fundamental difference in that, in setting up whatever the specific changes are in terms of the process between the 2?
Yes, but I will need to have legal counsel further explain the nuances of that. The 2 that are sponsored by the select board are more traditional to how we've done charter changes and bylaw changes in the past. So a charter change gets voted on by town meeting, it goes on the next election at the local level, and then it gets filed at the state.
But it's a filing, done deal, the voters approved it, and it gets,
My understanding
further action.
is yes. And bylaws are obviously different. Bylaws get adopted, and then it needs to be suited to the AG's office, but then it gets sort of added to our bylaws. Charter changes obviously need a vote of the voters. Special act, again, I've personally never worked on a special act process, but from what I understand, it goes through town meeting, just like a charter change, and then it needs to go through the general court first, the state legislative process. Then it comes back to the town. But because it goes through the state home rule petition process, it's like a home rule petition. It then becomes sort of like a state law in effect. And any changes to that need to go back through that process, is my understanding. But this is where the nuance of the law comes into play, because is it a home rule petition again, or is it just a charter change process? And that's where I would defer to legal counsel to help guide that.
Yeah, thank you. And we did have a visual in the Town Governance Study Committee's final report that showed a flow chart of these 2 processes, but I think you're right, there's some subtle things missing from those 2 things, but clearly that extra step is there, and that opportunity to basically go direct to the legislature without the voters' approval, and then to go back to the legislature to change things seemed to be consistent with what the Governance Study Committee had surfaced working with their consultant.
Yeah. That was the impression I had.
If I may, what Attorney Durentis said, and I don't remember if it was at this meeting or at a CBRC meeting, he said once it comes back from the legislature, the same parts that could be changed through the town meeting vote process could be changed again. So there are exceptions to what can be done
Via town meeting.
by town meeting and a vote of the public. But even though it's a special act and it goes to the legislature, once it's approved, it's just another home rule charter, and home rule charter procedures apply. The other thing I'd say is that the CBRC's warrant article and the CBRC's stated intent in the meetings I've been listening to is that it would come back from the legislature and go before the people. So it's, they've said that they would include in their special act motion a request that the final charter is approved by the legislator, then go before the public in town. Not required, but a good idea, is what they said.
So, if I may,
Please.
I happen to agree with a lot of the tactical and sort of stepwise changes the CBRC is looking at. I fundamentally disagree with the process that's being undertaken, and in my opinion, to the exclusion of engagement on a broader level. I think one of the most important takeaways we received from that charter, from our town governance study committee, even with people steeped in experience in this town government, they couldn't drive to a conclusive recommendation of change in 15 months of working with a consultant. And so to me, there's nothing that speaks louder than the need to have an independent body focused on this issue for 18 months that is chosen by the voters to move forward. So while I, again, respect what the CBRC is looking at, I fundamentally disagree with how they're going about it, because it lacks equity, it lacks agility, frankly, for the town. It kind of puts us in a corner to have to go back in some cases to take action. And at the end of the day, as I said, I feel like 10 plus years I was asking, why can't this be done through the CBRC? And never in the history of my political involvement in this community has a body of hand-appointed individuals gone to this depth. And again, I'll let the process play out, and I'm open to hearing what they have to say, and I'm open to the spirit of collaboration. But I have to say, as a market researcher, I believe in ethnography. I like to watch things happen and actually not have people tell me what they're going to do, but actually see what's being done. And I've been nothing but frustrated with what I've seen being done or not done in this process, including the fact that we're talking about getting together when? Late September? When the FinCom has to do hearings on this, and they're already going to be doing hearings from the Planning Board on the 28th and the 3rd of October, and the book needs to be published by October 5th. And that doesn't leave a lot of room for collaboration. That feels like a setup to me, or just, here's what we've decided, do you like it or not? And again, with due respect to the committee that's doing its work, that's not our lane. I cannot stress how much I feel that our articles are independent, and I think pursuing a process that is sound and consistent with the ability to do both at once. And I'm just going to leave it there because we're not taking action on anything tonight. But if I personally would like to hear the motions on 27 and 28, and I would like to take action on them as they are our articles when the town administrator and town council come to an agreement on how to go about doing that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Joseph. And what I'd like to do is just comment on what is on my plate to go to the CBRC chair and say more or less what you've just said. Is we need to have motions. We need to have this be a collaboration and not just a handoff, right? And if it's going to be a collaboration, then we have to move quickly on that. And that was my fear at the outset, and I expressed it. So we can't, just accept the handoff and do tweaking. We have to be integrally, if that's a word, involved in the process on the articles that we're interested in, right? There are probably half of what they've proposed has an effect on either the town administrator or the select board. So we should, as a board, be able to weigh in on that. And so the jury's still out. I mean, I hear what you're saying, though, and I want to see proof.
Well, if I may, we should be able to weigh in as any other member of the public. I mean, I do value and I respect those lines between, the lanes, I should say, between the two. They don't have to consult us. I do appreciate the overtones of collaboration, but my point is, if they're going to do what they're going to do, I feel like we've got precious limited time to do what we have to do, and we've been focused. So again, just for public record, in terms of the process they're undertaking, I think it fundamentally undermines the spirit of community input and voter voice and transparency and equity, which are two of our values that we're going to be hopefully talking about in our session tonight. But that said, I personally don't, if they told us we're not inviting you, no harm, no foul. I'm really not trying to impede anybody's process, and I said that even when we voted to the last town meeting to support their article for appropriation of money for legal counsel. That's fine. That's their purview as legislative body. If they want to get rid of us, that's fine. That's their purview. But I feel like we can't stop our process on the hope of collaboration. Right. If they invite us, great. If they don't, great. Either way, we need to proceed with what we think is right, and I personally think we've done a good job focusing on what's right in a way that does protect that transparency for the community.
Yeah, I have to say,
Mr. Sidney, go ahead.
sorry, I have to say, I've been attending some of the meetings, and I've been taking copies of the handouts, and I've shared them with the chair. I wish the CBRC were more open, sharing their working documents with us than they seem willing to be.
Are those handouts not online when they meet?
No, they
No,
aren't.
they're not. So along those lines, if I could just have the floor.
I'm done. I'm done.
Okay.
I completely agree with everything that Mr. Joseph just said. I want a point of clarification from this board. We're only talking about the, to the extent that we're invited, collaboration with the CRBC on articles that impact the executive and administrative functions of the, so we're not looking at weighing in on legislative matters and things. We're looking at just the TA and the town administrator and select board articles. And I think that's a very good point. I think the point about not having these materials online, there was a discussion with a resident about the difference between a charter commission and the CRBC. And one of the points that I had stressed is that my hope would be that a CRBC would be far more transparent, that there would be meetings on Saturday, that there would be Zoom meetings, that there'd be recordings, that there'd be engagement with the public, so that we would hear from a wider subset of the public than just those who are steeped in how Natick works. And that's all I have.
Well, and the lack of posting of documents attached to a public meeting, again, speaks volumes.
Again, I will take that up with the chair. I think I've given them ample opportunity to review what their proposed motions are. And we have said all along, we don't expect final, but we do expect input, right? And that, we have to, as Mr. Joseph put it, excuse me, we have to, if we're going to get on this train, we have to get on it soon. If not, we're going on our separate way, right? So let's just leave it there. Any other thoughts on that? Shall we let Jamie go up to his other meeting?
Apologize. They're just my only, and I don't mean to deviate from what was just discussed, but there is a couple citizen petition articles that we can certainly, including one by a member of this board, but also some others from other members that, pending the discussion, we're happy to provide guidance to this board on if you want to take them up. One, I know I've already been part of an email on Article 32 regarding the paid family medical leave. Just very, very high level, we've been looking at this. Administratively, it's probably going to be a pretty light lift. Financially, it could be a pretty heavy lift for the town. Heavy meaning, in theory, it's supposed to be paid for by the employees, but we'd have to negotiate it with 15 unions. Almost all of our employees would be impacted, and I would question whether or not unions would be willing to provide this to their members without compensation. So though on paper it might only be about a $300,000 to $400,000 cost to the town, the reality is it's probably $600,000 to $1 million. of a cost to the town. We're still running some of those figures to understand how this works. We would be the first community in Massachusetts to adopt this. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't. It just means that there's a potential impact or cost. So just, if we need more information, I'm happy to provide that as well. But John's also here to take notes or provide guidance. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Erickson. Okay. Do we have further questions on articles that we'd like to talk about?
Yeah.
Joseph, do you want to talk about 22?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, just very briefly, I mean, we don't have the substance to really go into it tonight, but just for the board's and public's knowledge, I filed Article 22 as a citizen petition, which is to amend the zoning bylaw with regard to body art establishments in the downtown mixed-use zoning district. Business owner, actually a couple of business owners had approached me on differing occasions in the last several months regarding permanent makeup, which is a technique to apply essentially what from the outside looks like a tattoo, but there is a distinction between permanent makeup and the depth the needle goes versus traditional tattooing in the dermis. So there is a line between those two in definition. But more broadly, you know, apparently we've lost at least one cosmetic esthetician as a potential business owner in Natick Center, and we do have a newly opened business that essentially located in Natick because they were told that it was allowed. And once they signed a lease and came to town hall to get the Board of Health to sign off on things, they were told, oh, well, it's not allowed where you signed your lease. So it's this idea of where we have the zoning for something is not inclusive of all areas of town. So part of the motivation to bring this forward was to support essentially a town-wide adoption of new language that would allow for body art establishments, including henna, including permanent makeup, and yes, potentially tattoos to Natick Center as well. We'll have a specific motion. The reason I'm not ready to talk more in depth about it at this point is there are other zoning bylaw changes that the Community and Economic Development Director is working on right now. Mm-hmm. Those changes might affect how a motion for the citizen petition that I filed might unfold. So this will probably come up late in September into early October. I spoke to the chair of the Finance Committee today about scheduling the zoning issues will be after the planning board hears them. So.
Okay.
Are you already on the planning board?
Thank you so much. Hold on.
Will be.
Thank you so much for the clarification on that, because that's helpful. It tells me of the what the process is. I had a feeling since my planning board connection hadn't mentioned it, that it has not been raised with them, and I'm hopeful that you're going to get on their agenda. And so you're on their agenda for the end of September?
Well, I'm hoping to be. Apparently, they're hearing all of these at their last meeting on the 28th. Is that right? They're hearing zoning?
Yeah.
I think it was the 28th or 27th.
It's 2 weeks.
But they need to post it 14 days in advance.
Correct.
So you need to have the motion to them at least 14 days in advance.
Yeah,
so they can
and
post it.
I'm waiting to hear back from the Community Economic Development Director to understand the impact.
Yeah,
So
I just don't want you to miss.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Good. Good. What is microblading?
It's a process with the eyebrows. It's like,
Okay.
it is,
Your mic's not on.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
It's a semi-permanent process of tattooing the eyebrow hair.
I did not know.
Essentially what it
Yeah,
is. Mhm.
learn something new every day. Okay, terrific. Thank you, Mr. Joseph and Ms. Pope. Okay, any other considerations we want to go through tonight? And remembering, we've got tomorrow night to go through all these. But I think, just as a suggestion, going back to the CBRC issue, if we could all independently look at the suggested changes in Article, 27 and 28, the CBRC ones, I'm sorry, 25 and 26,
Mr. Chair, if you want me to
24
send
and
those out to the
25.
rest of the board, from the last meeting they had.
No, let me talk to Mr. Griesmer first, but then, yeah, we'll see how that goes. But in any event, I am expecting motions to be distributed, and for us, you know, if they're draft, like rough draft, I don't care. right? We need something to look at. And if we're going to be in it, part of the, we need to know basically, and we said it earlier, we need to know whether we're part of the process or not. It's a simple question. Okay, so I will hopefully get that to you quickly, and then we can, you know, there are the two parts, getting you the motions or proposed draft motions, and then setting up a working group if that's the desire of both the board and the committee. So that is all on that. Do I have any other thoughts on town meeting warrant? Going once, going twice. Sold, okay. So we are now going to exit public session and go into our retreat, and our retreat is for planning select board and town administrator goals, as well as norms and values for the future.
May I suggest we're not exiting public session, we are exiting television. If somebody
that is
wants to
true.
show up from the public, they are more than welcome to show up for the
That's
public.
true. Thank you for the clarification.
I don't want to send the wrong message out.
It is still open, town hall is open. If you'd like to see the sausage being made, by all means, come down.